Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of the Limestone Lowdown. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Jared Hudson, who's running for the Senate. Mr. Hudson, if you'd like to take it away and give your normal introduction, who you are and why you're running, and we'll just go from there.
Yeah, number one, thanks for having me. Number two, I'm not a very special person. You are very special people for having me on the show, so I appreciate it. But yeah, my name is Jared Hudson. I'm running to be the next Republican senator from our great state of Alabama. And the most important thing about me is that I'm a born again believer in the person of Jesus Christ. That means that I believe that Jesus is God incarnate, and he came and lived a perfect life for us. And it's through him we're set free. And it's important about me because it's the only thing about me that's eternal. That's why it's number one. Secondly, I'm a seventh generation Alabama family man. I've got a beautiful blonde headed wife, three beautiful dark headed little girls, and we're raising our girls right here in the great state of Alabama. So I'm a seventh generation Alabama family man. Number three, I'm a United States Navy SEAL sniper. I'm a law enforcement officer, still currently as a sheriff's deputy, as an investigator and a SWAT deputy with Blount County Sheriff's Office, and a task force officer with Homeland Security. And then finally, I'm the CEO of a nonprofit Covenant Rescue Group that combats human trafficking. We've actually done a lot of work with y'all Sheriff's Office right there in Limestone County. And it's just a privilege to be able to do the things I've done. One, to be able to proclaim the name of Christ from any platform that we have. That's what we're supposed to do because Christ is what the world needs. It doesn't need another U.S. senator. Secondly, to be a family man, have three beautiful girls and a wife that we are working together to raise our girls in our state with our Christian conservative values, but raise them up in the way they should go. So when they're old, they won't depart from it, as Proverbs tells us. And then finally, the service that I've had the opportunity to provide, the privilege of being able to provide it, whether it's as a war fighter on foreign battlefields, as a law enforcement officer fighting crime in our communities, or the CEO of a nonprofit that combats human trafficking. Those are the three things that define Jared Hudson: faith, family, and the service that we've been able to provide.
Well, thanks. Well, thank you for that. Well, we've got just like 4 or 5 questions, so we'll get into those. So, you've made election integrity a major issue. What specific reforms would you pursue in the U.S. Senate, and how would those reforms balance security with voter access?
Yeah, well, I would go ahead and say if I was sitting there right now, we've got to fight to get the Save America Act passed before the general election coming up in November. When I take office in January, if it's not passed, we've got to fight to pass it then, but we really need it passed before the general election in November. We all see what just happened in the mayor election and the mayoral election in California, right, out in LA.
Absolutely.
And how long do they count those ballots for? And then the one lady, she won. I can't remember the name. But either way, she won with like the exact number of absentee ballots that came in. She got like 100% of that vote. We have got to make sure that we secure our elections federally with voter ID and ultimately citizenship, proof of citizenship. Alabama already does this. So delivering on that is probably the most important piece of legislation that we can pass that's going to protect our elections. And it doesn't mean they're going to be perfect. That's the other thing. Everybody thinks there's one smoking gun. It does not mean they're going to be perfect. But what it does mean is it means that California is doing the same thing that Alabama's doing. So with that being said, that's the first thing with election integrity. I'm sorry, my dad's a Southern Baptist pastor. I come by it honestly. That's what my answers might be too long. What was the second part of that question?
How would those reforms balance security with voter access?
Well, yeah, how would they balance security? Well, the biggest thing is our Constitution outlines that states are the ones that get to control elections, right? They dictate time, place, and manner. So making sure that the states are still able to dictate time, place, and manner as the Constitution outlines is important. But securing the elections, the federal elections especially, that where we require ID and citizenship, is going to secure what we're doing here in Alabama. Because here's the thing, it's not just a presidential election, it's all federal elections, House members, senators, because if we elect a senator who is not somebody that's for the things of our country or for the U.S. Constitution, it's going to be much more difficult for somebody like me as a U.S. Senator to work with that person to deliver for the United States of America, but more in particular, the people of the state of Alabama. So that's where the why securing federal elections with voter ID and citizenship is so important and why it impacts us in Alabama, even though we already require ID and citizenship.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what's an example of a federal power that you believe should be returned to the states, and why?
That's a great question. I think that it just recently happened. I would say the Roe v. Wade situation, returning that power to the states, was a step in the right direction. I'm not saying we have to stay that way forever, because I believe that life begins at at conception, and protecting life at all costs is the most important thing. So I would say that is a good move that's already happened. Now we have to go one step further and make sure that we call a spade and call murder murder, because life begins at conception. So as far as that goes, I think that's important that we maintain that and even go one step further, and don't go back to what it was beforehand, where the federal government is saying, states, you can't dictate that somebody can't have an abortion. I think we moved in the right direction, and we've got to continue walking down that road. Another thing that I would say that needs to go back to the states would be education, right? The Department of Education, you've got the federal government that has all of these strings attached, and they're trying to educate our kids. John Locke said the closest form of government to the people is the most effective form of government. I would also say the closest form of education to the people is the most effective form of education. God gave us our kids for a reason. The family should be teaching the kid or the child. My wife and I deal with that with a homeschool hybrid we run, the Oaks Academy, where our kids go. But also one step further at the state level. Even though there's issues at the state level, that's much more effective and much better than controlling education at the federal level.
Absolutely.
So the national debt continues to grow regardless of which party's in power. What federal programs or spending areas would you be willing to cut, and what would you protect?
We could cut a ton of federal programs, but I would say two of the biggest ones that I talk about on the campaign trail are the SNAP programs, right? The welfare programs that we have in place. If you look at the Somali immigrant communities in Minnesota, there were $20 billion in SNAP benefits that went there to legal immigrants, by the way, who are not assimilating to the U.S. Constitution and what we live by, right? So you have these communities that are not American in nature. They are just like what we see coming from the third world, coming from Somalia. You import the third world, you become the third world, and we were funding it. And you see $20 billion go to those communities. And of that, I believe they found out that it was somewhere between $9 and $10 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse that was, that they used those SNAP benefits for, sending a lot of it to Al-Shabaab in East Africa, from my understanding. So we're funding terrorists that I know I have buddies deployed right now fighting in East Africa. The SEAL teams deploy and deal with Al-Shabaab all the time. And so we have our war fighters fighting terrorists that our tax dollars are funding. So it's absolutely insane. That would be one of the biggest programs that we could cut. We could also cut subsidizing health care for illegal immigrants. There's a lot of different ways that people want to go about doing it, but here's the bottom line. We are subsidizing too many things for too many people. The last piece of that, and now that would be on the healthcare side here, just locally or nationally at the state and at the national level, $40 million a week is going to the Taliban through the UN. And you'll have people say, oh my goodness, well, it's going to humanitarian aid. It's not going directly to the Taliban. I've been there since the fall of Afghanistan, or since the Taliban took over. I can tell you one thing I know for certain: the Taliban are getting that $40 million, and they're the ones who are parceling it out. It's not going to humanitarian aid. My dad always used to say, don't let your Christianity become a vice. It's nice that we want to be nice to people, but we cannot fund groups like the Taliban with our tax dollars, especially when we're in the deficit that we're in, when we can't balance the books, and when American families, Alabama families, can't afford life. The programs I would keep, I think some of the biggest things that we've got to maintain are the national the national security support, but also the infrastructure that supports our national security. The federal government has three main jobs: protect the constitutional rights of the citizen. So we need to make sure that any funding we have goes to support the constitutional rights of the citizens of our nation, ultimately for me, the citizens of our state, making sure that we maintain the infrastructure across our state and our nation that is a national security nexus, and then finally maintaining a free and fair market. If the government got back to doing what they're supposed to do, those three things, we probably wouldn't have to spend as much money as we do. And it's not that anybody doesn't want, to help people, but teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. Give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. I really think that these welfare programs and these handouts we give, we have got to stop doing that, because we have families that can't put food on the table.
Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely.
And two more quick questions. So this next one is going to be about data centers. So we're up here in North Alabama, Limestone County. I work on the Arsenal. Redstone Arsenal is getting Space Force. So Data centers are bringing major investments and jobs to Alabama, but they also raise concerns about power usage, water consumption, impacts on local communities. And what role should the federal government play in balancing economic growth and protecting infrastructure and residents?
Yeah, well, one, I mean, we just talked about it. One, there's the infrastructure aspect that the federal government's supposed to invest in. You mentioned Redstone Arsenal. You got a massive economic engine up here in Huntsville that's churning, going over to Decatur, to Athens, over to the Shoals, all over the place, right? I mean, Limestone County, you look at where y'all are at, how many people drive from where you're at in Limestone County over to Huntsville to work day in and day out. Our infrastructure has to support that. Why? Because you're supporting the war fighters of this nation that are standing in the gap for us, who are currently deployed right now. I talked with a lady whose son is locked down in a bunker right now while they're dealing with the IRGC stuff. So with that being said, I literally just talked with her 30 minutes ago. They're under attack. With that being said, Huntsville, North Alabama, Madison, Decatur, Limestone County, the Shoals, everywhere up here is supporting the warfighter. So we've got to make sure that we invest in the infrastructure that supports the warfighter. But you mentioned AI data centers. That's one of the craziest things. Now, we're getting outspent 11-1, I think is what I was told today when it comes to this campaign. And my opponent's backed by crypto packs and AI packs. And that is one of the biggest things that they want to do. They want to take our farmland, our timberland, and they want to put AI data centers in place in these small communities. And they'll claim that it's economic growth, but it's not. That's one thing we have to understand. It might be jobs for a short amount of time for the contractors or whoever comes in to build it, as long as they're using Alabama contractors to build it, which a lot of times are not. But the fact of the matter is, it might be jobs for a short amount of time, but these data centers are not really providing a lot of jobs for the community. And they become a massive eyesore. Oh, and by the way, with technology, as you know, working on the arsenal, changing every 6 weeks, what becomes the problem? We have this massive data centers in place, and when does it become obsolete? Guarantee it's obsolete in less than 2 years, because we've got to have a bigger data center. We've got to have a better data center. So I think the biggest thing is, it's not that I'm against growth or data centers so much. I'm against the lack of transparency that exists. And the government is supposed to make sure that that transparency exists, so the community itself can decide. If a community looks and says, hey, we want this data center coming in because they're going to help subsidize our power bill, they're going to help subsidize our water bills, they're going to help our community out, the community should be able to say, yep, we want that here, and decide they do. But what we're learning is these big groups are spending a lot of money to come in, and they're lying to communities. They're buying off officials. They're making councilmen and mayors sign NDAs, and then they're voting to put a data center in a community, and nobody wants it because nobody knows what it really is until it goes up, and then they realize it's going to tear our community apart. We have to fight against that, and the best way we do that is to fight for transparency. And as a senator, that's something I can do. Fight and force transparency so it's a free and fair market. Allow that community to decide that we want a data center, as opposed to saying, nope, you can't put it in here, or hey, look, because of growth that we've got to put it in here. No, allow the community to decide what they want. And the only way they can do that is through transparency. Proverbs 19:2 says, zeal without knowledge causes you to miss the mark. And I think there are a lot of people that would be zealous for it, but they don't have any knowledge of it. And that's the biggest thing. We have got to give the community the knowledge of what's going on so that they can best decide. Because again, like you said, most of the time what we see, they come in, they put these things in place, and they impact the community. They impact their energy, and that's a massive affordability issue that families are dealing with now. They impact their water, and they impact their overall cost of living, because guess what happens when a data center comes in? It actually sometimes drives investment away or drives investment out. It takes over our farmlands. It impacts communities. Some of these bedroom communities that are around the Huntsville area where people are living, they don't want to live there anymore. And so you lose a workforce, and then next thing you know, you've got healthcare deserts that exist, but you also have the deserts that are starting to exist, the economic deserts, because you've driven things away. And I think that we run that risk with some of these AI data centers. So we've got to fight for transparency for the people to choose.
Great answer. Okay, so very last one. So if Alabama voters are sitting on the fence today, why should they choose Jared Hudson over the other Republican in the race tomorrow?
Yeah, well, I would say the first thing is I'm a true Alabama outsider. I'm an outsider. I should not be in this race right now. When you look at the money that's been spent on my opponent, is to the tune of $23 million from last I was told, or almost $23 million. And it's from all kinds of outside PACs and groups outside of the state of Alabama. The vast majority of the money we've raised has been from people in the state of Alabama. And I think between our two organizations, the campaign and then the other side, the Super PAC, I think that they've reported we've raised about $4 million total from people right here in the state of Alabama that wanted to donate $100, that wanted to donate $1,000, that wanted to donate $3,000, whatever it was, didn't matter. People that were just sending money to support an outsider. I'm a true outsider. We're not bought and paid for. I'm not bought and paid for by anybody but the people of Alabama who will go out and cast their vote and want somebody to take their issues to Washington and not bring the stupidity of Washington back here to them, the people of Alabama. I'm a true fighter for Alabama, and I think that that's the biggest difference maker, is that when we elect somebody in Alabama, we elect somebody to go be our voice, to be our envoy to Washington. We don't want somebody who's going to be the envoy of Washington to the people of Alabama. And I believe I'm the best man for that job. And I ain't a slick-tongued politician claiming I can fight on your behalf. I'm a real fighter. I've killed people for the nation, and I've stood beside men far greater than me that gave their lives for this nation. I'm telling you that I can fight for you, and I'm still willing to give my last breath so that you can take your next. And I won't bring the stupidity of Washington back here to you, the people of Alabama. So I'm Jared Hudson. I'm running for the U.S. Senate. I would be honored to earn your trust and your vote tomorrow on June 16th. Get out and let's send a warrior to Washington.
Well, thank you so much, Jared. We appreciate it. We know that you are so busy today, so thank you for taking the few minutes to talk with us, and we really appreciate it. So wish you the best of luck the rest of today and tomorrow. So
thank y'all so much. It's an honor to be able to talk with y'all, and look forward to talking with y'all after the Lord grants us a victory tomorrow night.
Yes, sir. Good luck.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Thank y'all.